Deep honor and deep emotion for me to accept this invitation to take part in this event, in this exchange, which brings us together on such significant days that we are living today and tomorrow. As we approach the 13th of August of 2026, a date in which Cuba and in many parts of the world there is an ongoing commemoration of the centenary of the birth of Comandante-in-Jefe Fidel Castro. We hope that this event will serve as a lasting tribute to this tireless freedom fighter who changed the destiny of our homeland and left an indelible mark on the history of Africa as well, and most particularly on that of South Africa. I would like to thank the South African Parliament and its Portfolio Committee of International Relations, DIRCO, and other organizers who made this encounter possible, a dialogue that will allow us to remember, reflect, and above all, reaffirm the determination to continue with our bilateral relations. I address you here today in a spirit of remembrance, historical truth, political commitment, and gratitude to a nation that, like our own, knows the price of freedom and the value of solidarity, but also to charter a way forward tailor-made to the actual constraints and limitations due to ongoing political pressures all around the world that can satisfy in the end the will of the people of Cuba and South Africa. Relations between our two countries are not built on a short-term interest or economic convenience. These ties of our own countries were forged through genuine solidarity and sacrifice and have since been strengthened through mutually beneficial multi-sectoral cooperation. To truly understand the depth of this bond, we must look back at the historical context of the national liberation struggle in Southern Africa during the 70s and 80s, when the apartheid regime in South Africa, with explicit support of the US and various Western powers, intended to extend its dominance over the southern region of Africa. When in 1975, South African troops invaded Angola to prevent the newly established independent government to assume power, Cuba received a request for assistance by the leaders of the MPLA, the Popular Movement, and firmly decided that we should unequivocally answer that call to support our African brothers and sisters. 381,482 Cuban volunteers came to Africa to defend the sovereignty of Angola and stop the advancement of the South African forces. Of those, more than 2,400 died in the battlefields of Africa. Under the guidance and wisdom of Fidel himself, we did not surrender. We did not hesitate. We risked everything, even our own safety and security, at one point of the battles, sending most of our aviation assets to Africa and significantly debilitating our strategic defensive positions in Cuba, in a time when the Ronald Reagan administration in the United States was particularly aggressive towards my country. Cuba's involvement had an enormous psychological and political impact on the apartheid system back then, as it suffered numerous defeats in the battlefields under the strategic advance of an organized African army backed and supported by Cuban volunteers with the assistance of Soviet advisors and military equipment. But this was no match for a South African regime that was also defeated in the end by failing principles and a gross violation of basic human rights. As we all know, the decisive moment, the turning point, as Mandela called it, came in the late months of 1987 and the beginning of 1988, with the historical Battle of Cuito Cuanavale in southern Angola. There, Cuban forces fighting side by side with the MPLA fighters, the Mkoto Wizizwe of the ANC, and the SWAPO fighters from Namibia, dealt a final blow to the South African army, one from which it could never recover. Ultimately, as Nelson Mandela said in Cuba in 1991, he said, and I quote, "Cuba's military involvement, without Cuba's military involvement, he would not be free. Cuba's contribution was paramount for the long-fought and hard-earned liberation, independence, and democracy of South Africa." And here I would like to point out that these events, spanning roughly 16 years, set the foundation for the future of the bilateral relations between our two countries. It underscored that Cuba's presence in Africa was not based on geopolitical interests, not based on an economic interest, but on principles of solidarity, humanity, and the need for the Cuban people to selflessly contribute to eliminate one of the most horrific and immoral policies ever implemented. Nelson Mandela's visit to Cuba, just a few months after his release from Robben Island in 1991, precisely on the 26th of July, commemoration in Cuba, marking the starting point of the final push for our independence, greatly contributed and outlined and defined the relations of our countries in the future democratic South Africa. 11th of May, 1994, when Fidel came to Pretoria for Mandela's inauguration, formal diplomatic relations were signed. Cuba enjoys the honor of having been one of the first countries to be recognized diplomatically by the government of the African National Congress under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. This relationship has been characterized by political trust and cooperation. One of the most intense first engagements between both our governments concluded with Cuba being able to assist the emerging democratic nation with Cuban doctors for the rural areas. It was then Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma who spearheaded this project and secured directly from Fidel a first batch of 463 Cuban doctors who arrived in different groups between 1996 and 1998. Dear Excellencies, let me tell you that today, after 30 years of uninterrupted medical assistance from Cuba, there are still 55 of those doctors who came in that initial group who have been here for a lifetime, meticulously contributing to the well-being of thousands of South Africa, spending more than 28 years of uninterrupted work. Also in this field, it is worth mentioning that the Fidel Mandela Scholarship Program began also in those days, 1987. This initiative has enabled South African professionals to train in Cuba, the majority of them coming from disadvantaged areas. I was recently very touched when I took part in this year's graduation ceremony of the last 19 new South African students, now doctors, bringing the total number of graduates in Cuba to a huge number of 3,243 South Africans trained in Cuba in medicine. These are two special programs in which Cuba's government and people feel very proud to have been able to participate. I take this opportunity to thank the government of South Africa for trusting us in this endeavor. But throughout these 32 years of bilateral relations, cooperation has also been extended to many other areas, such as human settlements development, basic education, water and sanitation, sports, science, culture, civil engineering, working with a wide array of South African counterparts who have always trusted not only the professional quality of our team members, but their human aspects and solidarity-driven way of life. These examples, as explained previously, demonstrate that the relationship between Cuba and South Africa has been pragmatic, vibrant, and dynamic, driven by mutually agreed interests, promoted and prioritized by high-level political exchanges, which reflect the depth and maturity of our ties. Today, as Honorable Baumapelo was explaining, Cuba is facing one of the most critical situations we have had in recent history. This is essentially due to the unprecedented intensification of US economic, commercial, and financial sanctions, blockade we call it, which in 2026 has reached levels that very recently United Nations Organization have described as an ongoing silent Gaza. Since January 2026, President Donald Trump's administration has declared a national emergency and effectively imposed a blockade on fuel supplies to Cuba, imposing tariffs and sanctions on any other country that sells or supplies oil to Cuba. The result has been dramatic, and allow me to give only a few examples that illustrate the actual situation in my country. In the last 8 months, Cuba has only received one shipment of oil, one oil tanker from Russia in the last 8 months. We need to function as a country 4 to 6 shipments monthly. So just imagine how scarce has become oil, fuels, gas in Cuba at this moment. Daily power cuts regularly exceed the 20 hours in many parts of the country, comes to days, disrupting economy, schools, and our own way of life. Food production has fallen by around 60%, while the prices of basic goods that are usually imported have risen very sharply. The availability of essential medicine has also fallen to approximately 30% of the normal levels that we used to enjoy in our nation. Historically, and up to 2020, Cuba's infant mortality rate was amongst the lowest in the world, only compared to first and most important nations in the world. In the last year alone, it has more than doubled. This means that newborn babies are dying as a direct result of the blockade, which prevents access to the appropriate treatments, equipment, and medical devices needed to take care of them. UN Special Rapporteur Alena Dohan has confirmed the negative impact of unilateral coercive measures on human rights in my country, stating that US sanctions have shaped the country's economy and social landscape, undermining the fundamental right to life, health, food, and development of millions of Cuba. In this context, Cuba appeals for international solidarity. It is not merely rhetorical. It is an urgent call for concrete action by the international community. We need your help by demanding the immediate lifting of this blockade and the extraterritorial measures that prevent Cuba from accessing fuel, food, medicines, and funding. South Africa's voice and action are particularly important. Its historic consistency in defending justice, its leadership in the Global South, and its own experience in the struggle against oppressive systems give this country a unique moral authority to denounce the blockade and mobilize regional and international support. In this regard, I wish to express on behalf of the people and the government of Cuba our deepest gratitude to South Africa for its constant expressions of solidarity, for its support at the United Nations, and for its defense of Cuba's right to develop its own social model. This year, 2026, Cuba and South Africa celebrated 32 years of diplomatic relations. Last May, the Cuban embassy was happy to host a modest commemoration of this anniversary, graciously attended by the South African Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Alvin Botas, and the whole of the DIRCO team that attend to Cuba. In this gathering, DM Botas emphasized the desire to maintain and strengthen the historic ties between our two nations. In this new phase of our relationship, taking into careful consideration the local political landscape and social dynamics, we commit ourselves to continue deepening our collaboration in areas where both our countries have complementary expertise, needs, and potential. Key sectors include, of course, health, education, as well as science, technology, and innovation. Those are the key areas that our two countries are able to cooperate more effectively. We are working hard to substantiate the relation and hope for South African counterparts to step up to this big effort. Cuba does not want handouts. It is willing and able to be a partner, as it has always been to South Africa. Beyond technical cooperation, Cuba and South Africa also share a vision of the international order based on respect for sovereignty, non-intervention, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. In a world characterized by the imposition of unilateral sanctions and the weaponization of human rights, our alliance in forums such as the UN, the Non-Aligned Movement, the G77 plus China, and other platforms of the Global South is more necessary than ever. In this year, we are marking the centenary of Fidel Castro's birth, at a time when the blockade is attempting to struggle Cuba. The examples set by Fidel and Mandela offer us a clear way forward. The conviction that solidarity amongst people is stronger than any empire, that dignity is non-negotiable, and that history, in the end, is on the side of those who fight for justice. Today is the time to act with courage and principle in the face of threats and intervention. Excellencies, I call upon all of you to reach out and help us survive as a country, help us survive as a people, the same people that helped South Africa to be free, even by paying the ultimate price. To conclude, my deep appreciation for this committee and its members for having us today, and I can only say that together we are stronger. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Your Excellency, Comrade Rodriguez. We are now at a stage where we are going to allow members to engage with the presentation, but I think I must just fiddle with the protocol just a little bit and allow our guests who are here, if they want to ask a question or make a comment, they can do that. And then we will have members, as they engage with the input, also responding to the questions and the comments. We will also have Comrade Ambassador doing the same. We will then allow the department, DERCO, to also come in. And I will really, DERCO, like you to get into the historical context of the ARF and why South Africa will not abandon the ARF, because it is law. It's not something that we pick from trees. It's policy which has been passed here, so that we can lay this matter of the ARF to rest. Where some people still say we're wasting money, we should be building clinics. Not that clinics are not important. So that we can deal with that matter. So that by the time we leave here today, all those who still hold the idea that the RF is unnecessary, maybe they would have been convinced that it is necessary, because we are internationalists and our struggle was never in isolation, as Comrade Rodriguez has explained. So there are some who want us, now that we are in democracy, to forget completely and erase our memories, that there are lives that were lost here, blood was shed in the African continent. There are families that donated their own children to come and engage in a struggle here in South Africa, and they lost their lives. And today we are told, no, just forget about them. It's not necessary. We are a democracy now. Those lives are meaningless. When they themselves, in the quest to make sure that colonialism and apartheid triumphs, they had friends internationally who were helping them to intensify the apartheid system. And today that friendship is in economic terms. They are still keeping it. That friendship is very powerful, it's very strong through globalization and this powerful movement and control of global capital. And they are saying to us, no, you must abandon your friends. But we will keep our friends through economic ties, private accumulation of capital, and so on. So we are elected to confront the truth, so we need to confront that truth, that it can be that in humanity there are some who sacrifice, including supreme sacrifices, and later you are told that you must jettison them and abandon them and not worry at all about them. What's happening, Your Excellency, in Cuba now, especially to the children, it's genocide. Actually, it's genocidal. And maybe in addition to the genocide perspective of Israel, we might have to come closer to this one, because it's genocidal to deny children medication. And as a result, they die as a consequence of decision made by some human beings who think they are powerful elsewhere. So we'll start on the left. If our